Have you ever caught yourself replaying a moment in your head? The betrayal, the insult, the disrespect, and thinking, one day, they'll regret it. You imagine that moment when karma hits them back, when they finally feel what you felt. It gives you this temporary sense of power, doesn't it? Like somehow, imagining their pain balances out yours. But what if I told you that the idea of revenge is one of the most dangerous illusions your mind can create? It tricks you into thinking you're taking control, when in reality, it's controlling you. See, revenge feels good for a moment because it feeds your ego. It tells you, they took something from me and I'm going to take it back. But here's the truth. Revenge doesn't take your power back. It just keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. It keeps you reliving that moment, that pain, that story, over and over again. They've already taken your peace once, and every time you think about how to get even, you're giving them another piece of it. You start waking up with them in your mind. You carry them into your day. You talk about them when they're not even around. They become part of your energy, your emotions, your focus, and that's the real loss. Because revenge doesn't free you, it binds you. You become emotionally handcuffed to the very person you wish you could forget. Think about this. Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It gives you this false sense of justice, but inside, it's just anger in disguise. It doesn't heal you. It just keeps you bleeding in silence. And that's the trap. Your ego loves revenge because it feels like strength, but strength and anger aren't the same thing. Real strength is calm. It's quiet. It's choosing not to let what they did define who you are. The moment you start chasing revenge, you stop growing. Because revenge keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps your energy tied to proving something to someone who probably doesn't even care. While you're planning how to make them pay, they've already moved on. And now, you're the one still living in the story. You become both the prisoner and the warden of your own pain. And let's be honest, revenge never plays out the way you imagine. You think it's going to satisfy something deep inside you, that it'll make things even, that it'll close the chapter. But it doesn't. Because revenge can't heal what was broken, it only mirrors it. You end up carrying the same darkness that once hurt you. You start acting from the same pain that damaged you. And suddenly, you've become what you hated. Bitter, reactive, small. Here's what most people don't realize: when you seek revenge, you're still letting them decide your behavior. They push a button, and you react. They control your emotions without even being there. That's not justice. That's slavery of the soul. Freedom isn't about watching them fall. It's about not caring if they ever do. Revenge makes you think you're taking power back, but real power doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't need to destroy others to feel strong. Power is when you can look at someone who hurt you and say, you no longer have access to my emotions. That's not revenge. That's mastery. That's emotional intelligence. That's growth. And maybe that's why revenge feels so tempting. Because it's the easy way. It's easier to imagine hurting them back than it is to sit with your pain and process it. It's easier to react than to rebuild. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose not to engage, you're not being weak. You're reclaiming your peace. You're choosing yourself over the story they tried to write for you. Revenge is noise, peace is power. One screams for attention, the other speaks in silence. One burns fast and leaves you empty, the other takes time but fills you completely. The illusion of revenge is that it gives closure. But closure doesn't come from seeing them hurt. It comes from realizing you no longer need to see it. You can't heal by becoming the same as the person who wounded you. That's not justice. That's repetition. The more you seek to make them feel your pain, the more you feed the cycle that broke you in the first place. The illusion of revenge tells you that balance means payback. But real balance, real freedom, comes when you stop letting that moment define how you move forward. Because the truth is, every second you spend plotting revenge is a second you're not living your life. Every moment you stay bitter, you stay bound to them. And every time you let go, you take your power back quietly, completely, without ever having to lift a finger. The moment someone hurts you, they take something invisible from you. Not your dignity, not your reputation, but your sense of control. That's what betrayal does. It makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel like you have no say in the pain that entered your life. And that's why revenge feels so tempting, because it gives you a false sense of control again. But the real shift happens not when you fight back, but when you decide they no longer control how you feel. That's the power shift most people never reach, not because they can't, but because they keep trying to win battles that don't deserve their energy. See, control isn't about forcing outcomes or proving points. Control is about mastering yourself when everything in you wants to react. The real power move isn't shouting back, it's silence, it's restraint, it's keeping your composure when they expect you to lose it. It's choosing your peace over their chaos. That's not weakness, that's command. Because when you no longer react to their noise, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Every time you react, you give away a piece of that control. They text something that triggers you, and suddenly they own your emotions. They bring up your past, and instantly you feel the need to defend it. They ignore you, and you chase closure. That's how they stay in control, not because they're stronger, but because they know your reactions. Once they know what buttons to press, they don't even have to be present to manipulate you. You carry them in your head like a ghost that whispers every time you start to feel peace again. But the moment you stop reacting, everything changes. You start living from your values instead of your wounds. You stop playing emotional chess with people who thrive on confusion. And that's where the shift happens. When your peace becomes louder than your anger, you realize that silence isn't avoidance, it's direction. You're no longer being pulled by their gravity, you've built your own. People often mistake emotional control for indifference, but that's not what it is. Emotional control doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you decide how deeply you'll let it reach. You feel everything, but you respond to nothing that lowers your standards. That's when you start reclaiming power. When you stop giving your emotions away to people who never earned them in the first place. You don't win by proving them wrong, you win by no longer needing to. You don't win by showing them you're stronger, you win by realizing you don't need to be in their story at all. They expect a reaction because that's what fuels them. But when you give them nothing, no argument, no explanation, no emotion, you take away the only thing they wanted, control over your peace. There's this quiet confidence that comes when you stop trying to be understood by the people who hurt you. You start to understand something more powerful. You were never meant to convince them of your worth. You were meant to protect it. It's the power shift from reaction to response, from noise to stillness, from their control to your calm. And here's the truth, emotional control isn't easy. It takes practice. Because your mind wants justice, but your soul wants peace. Your ego wants to win, but your heart just wants to rest. Every time you choose peace over reaction, you're not avoiding the fight, you're ending the war. The war inside you between the person you were, emotional, reactive, desperate to be heard, and the person you're becoming, grounded, steady, untouchable. Imagine someone who once triggered you standing in front of you today, the same tone, the same words, the same manipulation. But this time, your face doesn't change. Your energy doesn't move. You listen, you nod, and you walk away. That's not coldness, that's control. That's the power shift. Because now, they can no longer pull you into their chaos. You've become the calm they can't disrupt. That's the kind of control that lasts, not the one built on revenge or reaction, but the one that comes from understanding your worth so deeply that you refuse to hand it over again. Because when you take back control, you stop being the victim of what happened to you and become the author of what happens next. And that shift from emotion to intention, from reactivity to response, is where you stop fighting for power and start becoming it. Let's talk about what real revenge looks like. Because most people think revenge means getting even, proving a point, or showing the person who hurt you that you came out on top. But that kind of revenge always keeps you tied to them. You're still dancing to their rhythm, still checking if they noticed your success, still hoping they regret what they did. That's not freedom. That's a different kind of prison, one where your progress depends on their attention. The real form of revenge isn't loud, it's silent. It's not fueled by rage, it's powered by growth. It's becoming so focused on your evolution that you stop needing them to see it. You see, when someone hurts you, they expect you to fall apart. They expect you to shrink, to become bitter, to carry the same pain they caused you. But when you rise instead, when you build instead, when you heal instead, that's the ultimate revenge. Because now you're proving something far deeper, that they never had the power to destroy you. They only revealed how much strength you had left to discover. Growth is the only revenge that doesn't poison you while you pursue it. It's the revenge that builds peace instead of burning bridges. Think about this. When you spend your days thinking about how to get back at someone, your energy stays stuck in the past. You're trapped in the story they created. You're still living in reaction to them. But when you decide, I'm done trying to prove anything, something inside of you unlocks. You stop acting from pain and start acting from purpose. Every time you choose to build your peace instead of breaking theirs, you move one step further from the person they tried to make you. There's something deeply powerful about indifference. Not hatred, not forgiveness, indifference. Hatred means you still care. Forgiveness takes strength, but indifference takes mastery. It means they no longer hold emotional weight in your world. Their opinion no longer shapes your mood. Their absence no longer leaves a hole. Their success or failure doesn't move you, because you've outgrown the entire emotional equation that once tied you to them. That's when you know you've truly taken your power back, when their name crosses your mind and it feels like remembering an old story that no longer hurts. Indifference doesn't come easily. It's earned through self-awareness, healing, and a lot of uncomfortable honesty. It's when you start asking, why does this still bother me? And instead of blaming them, you start healing you. That's growth. Because healing isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about understanding why it affected you so deeply and learning to rise above it without needing closure. The closure comes when you realize you don't need one more conversation, one more apology, or one more explanation to move on. You can close that chapter yourself quietly, peacefully, with grace. The best part about choosing growth over revenge is that it changes your identity. You stop being the person who was wronged and become the person who rebuilt. You stop being defined by what they did and start being defined by what you did after. That's power. When they see you at peace, doing better, glowing from the inside out, they don't just see success, they see freedom. And that freedom can't be faked. It's not the kind of confidence that screams, "Look at me now." It's the kind that whispers, "I don't need you to look." And let's be honest, sometimes you'll still crave that validation. You want them to see how much you've grown, how much they lost, how much you've built. But remember this, true growth doesn't perform. It doesn't chase attention. It simply exists unbothered. Because real revenge is when you no longer need to prove you've healed. You just live in a way that makes it undeniable. Indifference isn't coldness, it's peace wearing armor. It's not pushing people away, it's protecting your energy. It's saying, "I wish you well, but you no longer get access to me." And that line, that quiet separation, that's where growth becomes powerful. Because you no longer spend your time wondering what they think, what they're doing, or whether they regret losing you. You're too busy building a life that makes the past irrelevant. Growth is also about grace. Not grace for them, grace for you. Grace to make mistakes, to heal slowly, to take time. Growth doesn't happen in perfect lines. Some days you'll feel healed and some days you'll want to scream. But every day you choose not to go backward, you're winning. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you stay silent when provoked, every time you choose peace over pettiness, that's growth. That's the slow, powerful revenge of becoming unrecognizable to your old pain. And when you finally reach that point where you can look back and say, "I'm no longer angry, I'm just grateful," you'll realize something profound. Their actions gave you a chance to meet a stronger version of yourself. They taught you boundaries. They showed you what you'll never tolerate again. They pushed you toward healing you might have never pursued otherwise. That's the irony of it all. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the most become the reason you rise the highest. That's why growth and indifference will always be the real revenge. Because they strip away every bit of power your enemies thought they had. They wanted to see you break. Instead, they saw you build. They wanted to see you beg. Instead, you bloomed. They wanted to see you stuck. Instead, you started over. And the best part is, you didn't even need to fight them to win. You simply became someone they can no longer reach. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you may never get the validation you think you deserve from the people who wronged you. You might never hear them say, "I was wrong," or "You didn't deserve that." You may never get that moment where they look you in the eye and realize what they lost. And for a lot of people, that's what keeps them stuck. They can't move forward because they're waiting for someone else to acknowledge their pain. But waiting for validation from the person who hurt you is like waiting for fire to apologize for burning you. It's never coming because they don't have the awareness to give it, and you don't need it to heal. Validation is powerful because it tells us our pain is real. But here's the twist. You don't need their validation to know your pain mattered. You already lived it. You already felt every ounce of it. You already survived it. So why keep giving them the authority to define your healing? The moment you start needing someone else to confirm your worth, you hand them your peace like a trophy. You make their opinion the gatekeeper to your confidence. And that's the same control you've been trying to take back. Think about how often we replay moments in our minds. If only they understood what they did. If only they could see how much I cared. If only they knew how strong I became after. But that's just another form of seeking validation. It's still you trying to get them to see your value through their lens instead of recognizing it on your own. The truth is, their recognition doesn't change your worth, it just changes your mood, and your worth should never fluctuate based on who notices it. When you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. You start giving it to yourself. You stop waiting for applause, and you start clapping for your own growth. You start realizing that your peace isn't a prize someone else gets to award. It's a right you claim every day you choose yourself. Because people who hurt you aren't thinking about your healing, they're thinking about themselves. They're trying to protect their image, justify their actions, or simply avoid discomfort. That's not your responsibility to fix. Your job isn't to make them see your worth, it's to stop shrinking until they do. And here's the thing, sometimes people don't validate you because they can't. They don't have the emotional depth or honesty to admit what they did. They'd rather twist the story than face their guilt. So stop chasing clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. Stop expecting emotional honesty from someone who hides behind pride. Stop begging for recognition from someone who was never capable of giving it. You can't force accountability out of people who built their identity on avoiding it. Validation becomes a trap when it makes you believe your peace depends on someone else's understanding. It doesn't. Real peace doesn't need to be witnessed to be real. You can heal quietly. You can rise in silence. You can move on without making an announcement. You can find closure in knowing you gave your best, even if they couldn't see it. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity. Because validation that comes from within can't be taken away by anyone's silence. You don't need them to say you were right. You just need to know you acted from truth. You don't need them to say you mattered. You already do. You don't need them to regret losing you. That's not your story to write. Your story is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you once gave away trying to be understood. You start realizing that peace doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being whole. So many people stay stuck in emotional cycles because they're waiting for an apology that's never coming. But the most freeing moment in your life will be when you stop waiting for it. When you say to yourself, I don't need you to understand me anymore. I understand me. That's when the healing starts to become permanent. Because now, your validation isn't external, it's internal, it's yours. And that's where your power multiplies. Because once you no longer need their approval, their control dissolves. They can no longer manipulate your emotions by withholding praise or pretending you don't exist. You become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you're centered. You know who you are, you know what you bring, you know what you've overcome, and you don't need anyone to clap for you before you start walking. Validation doesn't make you worthy, awareness does. And once you learn to validate yourself, you start living differently. You stop trying to prove your worth and start protecting it. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. You stop reacting to rejection and start respecting your own boundaries. Because when your worth no longer depends on who recognizes it, you finally become free from every person who tried to make you doubt it. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood ideas in human relationships. People often think forgiving someone means excusing what they did, letting them back in, or pretending it didn't hurt. But that's not forgiveness. That's denial. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from the poison they left behind. Because the truth is, you can't heal from something you keep carrying. You can't move forward while you're still dragging the weight of resentment behind you. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't anger, it's release. Holding on to bitterness feels like power, doesn't it? It makes you feel like you're standing your ground, like you're refusing to let them get away with it. But bitterness doesn't punish them, it punishes you. It's like drinking poison and hoping they'll get sick. You replay the moment they betrayed you over and over again, thinking that maybe one more mental replay will make it make sense. But it never does. The mind replays what the heart refuses to release, and as long as you hold on to that anger, they still have control. Forgiveness is how you take it back. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean you invite them back into your life. It doesn't mean you trust them again. Forgiveness means you've reached a place where you no longer need them to suffer for you to be at peace. That's power. Because real forgiveness says, I choose to stop letting this pain define me. It's not saying what they did was okay. It's saying it's over. It's choosing peace over punishment. Think about it. Every time you let your anger dictate your choices, they're still influencing you. They're still present in your thoughts, in your emotions, in your reactions. That's not freedom. But when you forgive, you create distance between what happened and who you are now. You separate their actions from your identity. You're no longer the person they hurt. You're the person who survived it. And survival means you get to decide how much space that pain gets in your new life. Forgiveness is also about emotional maturity. It takes strength to say, you hurt me, but I refuse to become like you. Because that's what pain tries to do. It tries to turn you into the very thing that caused it. It tries to harden your heart, to make you cynical, to make you stop trusting people altogether. But forgiveness keeps your humanity intact. It lets you walk through the fire without becoming the flame that burns others. You stop being reactive. You stop being defined by anger. You become steady, grounded, whole. That's not weakness. That's emotional mastery. Some people think holding a grudge protects them. But a grudge is just an open wound you keep touching to make sure it still hurts. And every time you revisit it, you delay the healing. Forgiveness closes that wound, not because it forgets, but because it accepts. It says, yes, that happened. It shouldn't have. But it will not define the rest of my story. That's strength. The ability to move forward without pretending the past didn't happen, but also without letting it steal your peace. Forgiveness also gives you back your focus. When you stop carrying resentment, you have more room for purpose. The energy that used to fuel your anger now fuels your growth. You start pouring it into things that actually move your life forward. You stop asking, why did they do that? And start asking, What can I build now that they're gone? You start using the lesson instead of reliving the loss, and let's be honest, forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. Some days you'll feel at peace, and other days the anger will come back. But every time you choose to let go, even a little, you're taking one more piece of your power back. Because the moment you decide you're done letting them live rent-free in your mind, you start to feel lighter. You stop rehearsing the pain. You stop seeking revenge. You stop needing closure. You just live, and that's the sweetest kind of victory. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to stop letting their darkness dim your light. It means you understand that revenge doesn't fix anything. It just keeps you chained to the same fire that burned you. Forgiveness says, I'm walking away, not because I lost, but because I refuse to stay in a story that doesn't deserve me anymore. And the most powerful part, you don't even have to tell them you forgave them. You don't have to send a message or announce it to the world. True forgiveness is silent. It happens inside you. It's when you wake up one day and realize you're not angry anymore. Their name doesn't trigger you. Their memory doesn't sting. You're free, not because they made it right, but because you did. Because you chose peace over pride. Because you realize that forgiveness isn't letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the leash. There comes a point where you realize revenge, validation, forgiveness, all of it leads to one final choice to move forward. Not with bitterness, not with the need to prove anything, but with quiet confidence that you've already won. Moving forward doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you stop letting what happened define what comes next, because the real victory isn't showing your enemies you're stronger. It's living in such a way that they no longer matter. When you start moving forward, you take everything that was meant to break you and turn it into wisdom. You start seeing the pain not as a scar, but as a map, proof that you've been through something and survived it. You stop needing to announce your healing because your peace speaks louder than words ever could. The same situations that once triggered you now feel small. The same names that used to sting now feel distant. That's when you know you've leveled up, when their existence no longer shakes your energy. Moving forward means your energy changes direction. Instead of looking back at who hurt you, you start looking ahead at who you're becoming. You begin to invest in growth, peace, and purpose. You begin to choose environments that feed your soul instead of drain it. You start spending time around people who bring calm instead of conflict, truth instead of tension. Because once you've lived in chaos, peace becomes your luxury. You stop chasing drama. You stop arguing with people who refuse to grow. You realize you don't have to win every battle to win the war. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and never look back. The reason most people never truly move on is because they're still waiting for that one moment, that closure, that apology, that acknowledgement to feel free. But moving forward doesn't depend on what they do, it depends on what you decide. You decide the story ends here. You decide that what they took from you will no longer control your joy. You decide that your energy is too expensive to spend on things that no longer grow you. That decision, quiet, steady, final, is what true freedom looks like. The beauty of moving forward is that you don't have to erase the past to build your future. You can carry the lessons without carrying the pain. You can remember without reliving. You can honor your scars without reopening them. Every hurt, every betrayal, every disappointment becomes fuel for your growth. You start to see that everything that was meant to destroy you actually shaped your resilience. Every loss taught you something about strength, about boundaries, about peace. And that's what living like you've already won means. It means you stop needing permission to heal. You stop waiting for the world to notice your transformation. You stop letting pain dictate your pace. You just start walking, steadily, confidently, peacefully, because your life isn't defined by what broke you. It's defined by how you rebuilt. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need closure. You just need to keep becoming the version of yourself that doesn't flinch when the past whispers. When you move forward, you realize something powerful. Your silence is louder than any speech. Your peace is more noticeable than your pain, and your growth is the only response that matters. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You've already proved it to yourself. You survived, you healed, you grew, you rose. And that's what real strength looks like, not in the noise of retaliation, but in the calm of self-control. Moving forward is not a step, it's a mindset. It's waking up and deciding that no matter what they did, no matter what you lost, your story isn't over. It's still being written, and now you're the one holding the pen. At the end of it all, revenge isn't power, peace is. Revenge is loud, desperate, and temporary. But peace is quiet, unshakable, and permanent. The real victory doesn't come from making your enemies hurt. It comes from showing yourself that their actions no longer have the power to define your life. You stop fighting battles that drain your soul. You stop chasing validation that will never come. You stop needing anyone to understand your worth because you already do. The greatest revenge you will ever take is living well, with clarity, with dignity, with purpose. You win the moment their name no longer changes your energy. You win when you stop explaining, stop reacting, and start growing. You win when your peace becomes louder than their noise. Everything they did to break you becomes the reason you built something unshakable. Every insult becomes fuel. Every loss becomes wisdom. Every betrayal becomes a boundary. You transform pain into power by choosing not to repeat the same cycle that hurt you. You don't rise by fighting back, you rise by refusing to stay down. You don't prove them wrong by attacking, you prove them wrong by thriving. And when you finally reach that place where your happiness no longer needs their attention, that's when you've taken your full power back. So no, you don't need revenge on your enemies. You need redemption for yourself. You need peace so strong it silences everything that tried to destroy you. Because in the end, revenge fades, but peace lasts forever.